Are we in fact live? We'll see. Ah, I think it works.
We are live.
Ah, lovely. All right. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We're still learning how to do this because this is, in fact, the first time I've ever done something like this, and my lovely wife who's producing this episode as well. But she has designed the overlay that you are looking at right now. So shout out to her and her incredibly hard work to bring this stream to us over the past couple of days. Thank you. Um, we are going to stream to you Forbidden Lands Session Zero Raven's Purge campaign. And my name is Mikael Hellstrom. I'll be your GM and host tonight as we go through basically campaign building, campaign setup. We'll do some workshopping with our lovely players to see the backgrounds and weave together how this group came together in these Forbidden Lands. Um, before we get to all of tonight's stream, let's introduce ourselves. I am Mikael Hellstrom. I have been gaming since I was 11, so that's what lots of years ago, 35-ish. And I started with Drakar och Demoner, which Swedish gamers will be very familiar with. And I encountered then Erik Granström, who has written the setting for Forbidden Lands. So my generation of Swedish gamers are very familiar with the man. And I think pleased to see him come back and write more material for us. Yes, I'm very excited to go adventuring in these Forbidden Lands. Joshua.
So, my name is Joshua Lapointe. I've been playing D&D and Pathfinder-esque games for probably 10 to 15 years. This is my first review / playthrough of Forbidden Lands, and kind of excited.
I'm Jessica Lapointe, and I've also been playing for about 15 years or so. Play RPGs, mostly tabletop and online, a little bit of live action, and yeah, also first time doing Forbidden Lands. Also first time really doing an online setup like this, so we'll see what happens. Good luck to you all.
I'm Chris. I've been gaming far too long, since like 1978. I started with Redbox D&D, and I've played a lot of games over the years, and I've run more than I've played, so I'm kind of excited to actually play something, especially something that I haven't played. I read through part of the rules briefly, but it's all new, so I'm excited to see what Mikhail and the rest have in store for us.
Jeremy.
Perfect. Well, I'm Jeremy Strickland, and like Chris, first thing that I cut my teeth on was a Redbox edition back in about the same time, 78, 79, right around that time period. I've been playing for a lot of years. Same thing, tend to always be GMing, so it's nice to actually be on the other side for a change. But like a lot of D&D, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, so looking forward to doing this. This is great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm the young strapper here. I've only started in 83, 84, so several years after you guys. So for tonight, I have a few items on the agenda, if you will. I want to go over, since this is the time we are making sure that the group makes sense in the setting. I wanted to make sure that we all have an understanding of the setting, of the different cultures in the setting, of the dominant religions, and so on. For the people back home who are watching this, I can say that one key feature of the Forbidden Lands is that these lands that are called the Forbidden Lands, it's just one section of this particular setting. And it's sort of hidden between two mountain chains, and there is a reason for that within the lore. And over the past, say, 300-ish years, it's been covered by something called the Blood Mists. which essentially meant that anyone who was caught away from home at night suffered a gruesome, gruesome death. And that in turn meant that nobody could travel more than half a day and then they had to go back again. So I felt that in these times, that's fairly apropos. Think of a quarantine, and then that quarantine goes on for 300 years. Um, and what happens afterwards? And that's something that we're going to explore here. So it's only been 5 years since the blood mist disappeared, which means that a lot of these lands are very much up for exploration, and people who were previously very much isolated are now starting to reach out and establish trade lanes and so on. And of course, there are factions within the world that will be very interested in their own position of power and so on. Before we get to all those pieces, I wanted to, for the benefit of the audience, also go over the principles of the game as written by the game designers. 7 principles, and this is to set the tone, if you will. So first of all, the first principle: the world lies before you. So the players should feel that you have this new freedom to travel wherever you want in the Forbidden Lands, and thus it's up to me to provide you with a map, and then you to decide where you are on the map at start and where to go from there. So I'm not going to guide you in any particular fashion in that way, but I will answer questions and maybe give you some inspiration. The second principle: the land is full of legends. So this land has a very rich history. A lot of the history has been forgotten because of the isolation, but the remains of that history, ruins, castles, places that maybe forgotten villages that people forgot were out there, are still there to be discovered. And of course, as we play this campaign, your characters will benefit from learning from legends and maybe following the clues within the legends. Basically, they kind of act like story hooks and hooks for you to go to adventure sites and so on. So that's the second principle. The third is that the adventurers make their own fate. This means that I'm not going to tell you, and the game is not telling you, how your characters should think or feel. There is no, like in D&D, alignment scale. It's very much gray. You'll be able to find factions or NPCs in every kin, which is this world's equivalent to race in other games, in every kin that are generous, humane, but also terrible people. So the game is not going to code us to think that elves are inherently good and orcs are inherently bad. There's no such dichotomy here. Everyone might be very cruel, and everyone might have a heart of gold, and you never know who's going to be what. But that also means that you, as playing these characters, um, will have the opportunity to develop your own set of morality, your own allegiances, and live with the consequences of that. Basically, it's totally possible, and I guess I'm sympathetic towards that, but to try to play the shining light in a world full of darkness, because there's going to be a lot of factions that are definitely not pleasant to be around. There are definitely, the way the setting is written, it's quite dark. There is old enmities that have translated into bigotry in various ways. There are certainly people who are not terribly nice to each other. Cruelty is something that exists in this setting. So that's something to keep in mind. It's kind of like Deadwood in a fantasy setting in some ways. Or if we want to calibrate it that way, maybe more like Firefly in a fantasy setting. It really depends on where we want to put our scale there, and that's something that we want to discuss as well. But the point is, you shouldn't feel pigeonholed to be heroes in this game necessarily. But on the other hand, where you want to put yourself, that's going to be up to you. Principle number 4: nothing is for free. In this game, you will make your own decisions and go wherever you want to, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily get whatever you want wherever you go. There will always be a challenge there. There will always be something to overcome. Sometimes that will be physical. Sometimes that might be a puzzle. Sometimes it might be navigating social relations. Um, so my job is then to challenge you along the road and make sure that your actions have exciting consequences, play for interesting scenes and interesting drama. Um, it's not going to be easy. Sometimes it's about finding food, that something as basic as that, which is why it's a good thing to have a chef in the company, which we do have.
Hi.
um, Principle number 5: them that's got shall lose. This means essentially that if you actually do come into an enormous treasure or that magic artifact that you wanted to find, well, it's not sure that you'll be able to keep it. Um, it's my job to make sure that I challenge you on that as well. The other actors, factions, powerful NPCs. The more you build your reputation, the more they will notice that you're out there. And if you have the coolest sword of them all, they might try to grab it, things like that. So the challenge does not disappear just because you come into great wealth and fortune. Principle number 6: death is part of the story. Um, the way the rules are written, it's fairly easy to become incapacitated. It's called broken in this system. But the idea is that it should be a bit difficult for your character to die. Now, I would advise you maybe not play it as some other game systems where it's fairly straightforward because the character is heroic to defeat um, the opponent in a physical fight. Uh, that might not always work. You might want to, assess the odds and go, well, let's run. Let's run away from this particular challenge. And this is particularly true, I would say, in the early parts of Raven's Purge, this campaign. Um, there's so many adventure sites available for us that have been written by um, uh, the Free League and published by the Free League, which makes us spoiled. But it also means that they're not calibrating the adventure sites according to what you would have in Dungeons and Dragons, according to levels. So you're not going to necessarily go to the first adventure site and find that it was calibrated for level 1. It's entirely possible that you go to some place and you go, oh, and then you come back later when you have learned more things. Right?
It's okay. You're allowed to swear. I noticed the NSFW warning on the stream, so you can swear. You don't have to stop yourself.
There will probably be much of it.
There might be.
Putting that out there.
But so principle number 6 reminds us that even though the rules are kind of geared towards leaving you broken, and that I as a GM should, if all of you are broken at once, I should use that moment to create an interesting story moment instead of just killing everyone. But it might end up that one of the characters suffer the ultimate fate, if you will, and that can happen in this game because the Forbidden Lands are unforgiving. We'll see. 7, principle 7: the end is never set. This goes back again to how you as players have great leeway on deciding the fortunes and outcomes of this campaign. Basically, it's very open-ended. There's a number of factions in the setting. Who will prevail? Who will sort of be who you might feel that you want to have an allegiance to? That's up to you. So you will be able to tip the balance in any number of ways, in any number of in any number of scenarios, and that's how it should be. So I haven't scripted how this campaign might end. I have no idea at this point. We'll find out. It's going to be very exciting. So that's basically the 7 principles of this game. In that sense, if we were to compare it to a computer game, I guess it's kind of like Skyrim. You can just ignore the main plot and go around an adventure all over the place, or you can pick up one of those hooks, and you decide which one of the hooks and in what order to play that out. So yeah, that's an introduction to the basic philosophy of this game. Now, I wanted to go over first of all. So we have you've all designed different characters. Why don't we introduce those to the viewers? Just the concept now, and then we have something to work with and make these stories a bit richer as we go on. Are we doing it the same way as we introduced ourselves, maybe?
Yep, that works. So I am playing Braynar. He is an old half-elf sorcerer that's basically stuck to himself for many, many years, and he's just on a simple quest for knowledge. He loves to open his small tent and basically live on the countryside whenever possible, and go from that.
I'm playing Frida. Frida the Bloody. She's a wolfkin fighter, but secretly she just loves to cook a good meal.
Marita is a human druid, fairly young and on the run from something. There's something perhaps a little bit shadier than one would expect from your normal everyday druid.
Hmm.
And I have Fiden. He's a dwarf minstrel who's actually, unlike a lot of dwarves, is okay with running around on the top side, and kind of has been a collector of a lot of the knowledge and the lore that's been going on. It's kind of like his hobby and his thing is to figure out what's going on and what are the stitch together all the pieces for people.
Excellent. Now I will make a note for our viewers here that so we what we've done so far is pretty much stat the character sheets and add a little bit of conceptual touches to that. One of the things that you have to do as part of character generation in this game is in fact to have a dark secret. So everybody has something. The way that works mechanically is basically when that comes into play during a session, the player character gets an extra XP for that. So it's basically, let's create some interesting drama and tensions that the character has to struggle with and learn from. But there are things that we have not established yet because this is session 0. So one of the things that I'm a bit curious about, looking at the map in Roll20, so wolfkin tend to come from the Fangwoods, which are in the south of the Forbidden Lands. The particular dwarf clan, Jeremy, that you have picked for yourself tends to come from the northwest, which is opposite in the Forbidden Lands. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is there, but it's just to locate where your particular culture tends to be, dominant, where their homelands and heartlands are. Let's see now. Joshua's, so you're a frailer half elf, which they don't really have any particular heartlands as such. They're intermixed with humans for the most part, and frailers tend to be maybe more olderlander humans than others. But the game isn't telling us that there is a particular association either way.
Which makes sense for the concept.
Yeah, exactly. And Marita, I believe, is an Asleen.
Yep. Not she's technically a horse person, but I don't ride very well, and I'm too broke to afford a horse.
So Asleens tend to come from let's see now. I think it's the eastern part of the continent more than the west. basically because when other things happened in the past, they were driven away from those places. I'm going to double check here. So I am, in fact, saying what I believe is correct. Where did it go? Excuse me a second. There we go. Yes, indeed. Eastern end of, um, basically along the coast. There's a group of plains there. So what we have here then is a group of characters that come from very different places in the Forbidden Lands. I found it interesting that the game is kind of telling us that um, players can come from all these different places. The map is unexplored for you guys at this point, which means that we can put down adventure sites anywhere on the map as you discover them. But at the same time, you have obviously traveled somewhere if you come from those starting locations, because otherwise you wouldn't have met. So, looking over the map then in Roll20, where would you say that your characters would be from? And note that we haven't put down any adventure sites on the map yet because you haven't discovered them, and that's how it should be. It's more, I feel like my character should be from this particular part of the world. You could even argue, if you want to, that you would have arrived recently in the Forbidden Lands from outside of them. It's possible to get in, it's not possible to get out. So this is up to you. Where would you be from, and so on? Where would you?
The concept I had in my head for Frida, she's fairly young,
Mm-hmm.
so she probably would have only left home recently.
Mm-hmm.
So she would probably still be relatively close to the woods.
Okay.
She wouldn't have gone too far from them just yet. Although I'm not, like I said, I don't know where everybody else is. So.
Yeah.
But
If you have that, if you look at that screen, so the furthest you can travel in a day, you can zoom in a bit and you'll see that there are hexagons. The furthest you can travel in a day with a horse is, in half a day, I should say, is 3 hexes.
Okay.
So a full day would be on a horseback would be 6 hexes, which is quite substantial. But that tells us also that most people haven't traveled more than 2 hexes away from their village during the Blood Mist. And I'm going to argue that a lot of people are reluctant to break that habit. I think that people are very much, creatures of habit. And I think that the reactions to the lifting of the Blood Mist 5 years ago have been, ranging from, this is awesome, amazing, we can be out at night, let's have a great party over this. This is the biggest thing that's ever happened in our lives. And let's go explore the entire world. To, this is really scary. Oh my God, where's the Blood Mist? Everything I knew has changed. And this kind of weird sense that it might have been a good protection for you, from some. And there were certainly few that were able to travel in the Blood Mist, and not be affected by it. So that includes the Wolfkin, as long as they stayed in their forests, and in fact the Rust brothers, and I'll tell you more about them in a little while. But yeah, let's go on and think about where others might have been from.
Okay. Looking at the map,
Mhm.
on the far east, there's a, looks like it's called Tendra.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like I'll ping it on the map there.
yeah, I see it.
So it looks like there's a little settlement there.
Yeah, it's marked a village. I do not have anything created for that village, and that's on purpose in a lot of these instances. So we could make that village an adventure site, or we could roll things for it. If you, because I have a village generator, they've been very. Free League has provided me with random tables for all sorts of stuff in the Game Master Guide.
Oh, yay.
I can randomize a dungeon. I can randomize, monsters and all sorts of things for you guys, and that's the point. It's supposed to be an exploration game, so few of these locations have been defined. We can
Right.
fill that place with whatever you want.
Well, I imagine that she's from there, but she doesn't want to go back due to reasons that I will send you privately
For
at
sure.
some point. But that's where she's from originally, and she was taught the druidic ways by the wise woman of the village.
Mm. Yeah, I should
So,
probably generate that village at some point just to have a backstory so that we know it's there.
yeah, I figure it's kind of like mentioning Firefly earlier. It's kind of like Janestown. Like
Mm.
bad
That's good.
bad things happen there. So she does not want to go back. But adventure and drama and story being the way they are, I imagine she will eventually be drawn back there.
Yeah, that could happen.
I was
Okay.
thinking something similar too with Frida.
Yeah.
I imagine the wolves are a much rougher society,
They are. They are.
and it's really something that character-wise she's very uncomfortable with, even though
Mhm.
she's a fighter because she just didn't really have a choice in the matter.
Mm.
She's not into the violence.
Right. Could it be
She's
a situation where you're kind of born in your culture and never really feel that you fit into it?
Yeah, exactly. That's very much where she's at.
Hmm.
And she avoids fights when she can, but being what she is and who she is, she kind of gets caught up in them anyway.
Because she's expected to. That's her role.
Exactly.
if you will. Yeah,
You
yeah,
see a 8-foot wolf with a long sword coming, you're
Yeah.
gonna pick a fight. It's what people
Someone will
do.
pick a fight and someone will hide behind her.
Exactly.
That's great. Oh, I should add, when we're talking about fights, it just popped into my mind. Unlike other role-playing games, you cannot, as a character, just kill someone in cold blood in this game. Let's say that you have defeated your enemy. It's broken. Your enemy is broken. And assuming this is not a monster now, you can't just slit a throat or what have you. You have to fail an empathy roll and then pay 1 point of damage in empathy to do it, unless you have the talent cold blooded, which you could develop over time. But that tells you something about how the game is looking at violence too. So I thought I should bring that out in terms because it's an important sort of thematic note.
It will make probably a lot of difference in the way that she is played.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. My enemy is defeated. I don't need to do anything more.
Yeah.
And
I
even
don't
so,
need to coup de grace.
yes, and but even so, I'm gonna say that there are some NPCs who have the cold-blooded talent. Right. So we have basically placed the general area of Frida somewhere close to Fangwood and Marita somewhere in the Tundra region. How about our dwarf and our half elf? Where might you fit into this puzzle?
Well, I think for my character, I was thinking more like you were saying up in the top, kind of left-hand corner of the map there. Obviously, in the rocky areas where I think the
Yep.
dwarves kind of kind of dwell. I was thinking, yes, pretty much it looks like a keep or a tower up there, like in that area near the clouds that are up in the far left, west and north there.
Yeah, those
Um,
clouds, by the way, those are remains of the blood mist.
oh,
Yep, so that's
okay,
something to know.
okay. So yeah, so I
They
think
still it's you can still find sort of pockets of blood mist here and there in the Forbidden Lands, and
okay.
that's one of the bigger ones. Um,
So
okay,
yes, so I think that's where my character is, and he's and he's more of a wanderer. I mean, being the minstrel and trying to figure out the legends and trying to stitch things together for people. He's also kind of perhaps sees himself as a bit of a teacher. Kind of, oh, I'm going to go and and just kind of spread, to spread the knowledge that might have been lost over the last few hundred years,
Mm.
and gather it and kind of distribute it around. But he's also kind of um, he's got a little disillusion too with what he's finding out there. So,
Probably.
so
Um,
yeah,
I will say that we had a chat as we were sort of developing these
yep,
character concepts that um, I'm guessing, and this is one of the things that I like to do when I'm campaign building is thinking about sort of the social and societal ramifications that of the conditions that the setting has set up. And in this case, 300 years of basically not being able to leave your home for very long excursions. Basically, you go out and you might, get 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers on foot, and then you have to go back again because about 30 kilometers is what you can do if you're fairly well trained and have some load on you. He said, having done his soldier march when he was 20. um,
Not being
um,
able to leave your home sounds vaguely prophetic, giving everything.
exactly. But that's the thing, right? So what happens then to knowledge and lore in those conditions? And I think one of the things that really kept knowledge alive have been minstrels, because I think they're much more um, common, if you will, than lore masters, sorcerers, and so on and so forth. So I would expect
Yeah, word of
someone like
mouth would be much easier to travel than, say, books or stories or papers.
exactly,
exactly.
exactly, and particularly now that the blood mists have risen, um, it's going to be so much easier for minstrels to travel, and I think they are probably quite welcome in various parts because they will bring news and news stories nobody ever heard of before
Right.
because of the isolation. So I think that's probably going to be a factor in that. I will add, now we're talking about lore and the keeping of knowledge, the Rust Brothers, the biggest single congregation, religious order, I would argue, or at least the most potent one. Um, it's basically the faith of the Alderlanders, the humans who came the last to the Forbidden Lands, and they tend to live sort of in the southwest, closer to the Iron Loch, which is the only way in. And they worship the god Rust and the goddess Heme or Heme, not sure of the pronunciation. Um, and they do so in very merciless ways. They will require villages who live under their domains to pay hefty taxes in food and silver, and also sacrifice. And this is well known. That includes human sacrifice um, to satisfy the gods that they worship. And you can recognize them on um, how they carry rusty pieces of iron, um, and they were in fact immune to the blood mist, which means that if anyone had any type of influence educationally on villages around where they were, they must have been very, very potent indeed. I think it's the most um, the strongest sort of indoctrination or educational uh, power of education, much like Catholic priests would have been teaching people in the Middle Ages. I think these Rust brothers have had a very strong capacity to imbue their worldview on the villages that they have dominated. But there's also a lot of people who fear them because of how they have behaved, which is not very strange. So Asleans and Alanders tend to not like these people at all. Um, so on. So speaking about the keeping of the knowledge, um, you would know about the Rust brothers, and you would know how powerful they are, and what a kind of a grip they've had on people, particularly in the Southwest. Um, Josh, haven't said where you are might be in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I've been looking at the map here. I've been figuring probably uh, Margelda. possibly even close to Backwater Bay, somewhere around where maybe that little house is or one of the huts on the eastern side. So
That seems very close to Morita, actually,
mhm.
which might be conducive for meeting, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, with this in mind, excuse me, that means that we have characters who are coming from basically two general areas on the map. Let's go over some things that you would know. So I've already mentioned the Olderlanders, and the Rust Brothers. Nope, that was the wrong book. We want to go over some of the other aspects of religion. I want to start there because you will be aware of these gods. And certainly Marita will be aware of these stories. If I recall correctly, there is at least some lore. No, no lore, but lots of wits. So I'm good with that. So basically, the humans have had a bit of differences in opinion, to say the least. There is a key difference in terms of, so in the mythology of the humans came, we're now counting 1165 after the shift. That's the year. And the shift was when the gods changed how the world looked like, because the humans had just arrived on the shores of this continent as refugees, in fact. And they were led by the protector god. And that's kind of where the humans stopped agreeing with each other about who is the protector god. There's this idea of a raven carrying a snake in its claws as the protector god was guiding humans towards these shores. The question then is, was the raven the god, or was the snake the god? And they can't agree with each other at all. The Rust brothers would argue that the raven was the god, but the raven was also made out of iron, thus rust. And the serpent was made out of wood, and that is represented by Hebe. And she's often depicted in sort of wooden effigies, while rust is created by iron effigies. There are definitely people who disagree with this, and so the Raven sisters would be the greatest single sect, if you will, that does so. And they are very much at odds with the Rust brothers. The Rust brothers will chase down and persecute and slay Raven sisters if they meet them. And of course, the Raven sisters resist that. They also tend to be witches very often. They would argue that the raven was the divine one. And unlike the Congregation of the Serpent, which is an older church, if you will, the Rust brothers are an offshoot of that. So the older Alderlander faith, if you will, spoke of the serpent as the divine one, whereas the Raven sisters talked about the raven as such. And so this is a central cleavage then between humans in the Ravenlands. Now, we do have non-humans here. And the dwarves don't care too much about that particular religious disagreement. They worship the god Huge and see themselves as the builders of the world, basically. And so because of that, they have no real stake in what the humans are talking about in terms of their divine situation. But one key feature then, when the humans arrived on this continent, the gods shifted the landscape and created these forbidden lands, so the story goes. And it was supposed to be shared between humans and dwarves and elves. And yeah, well, there is a lot of history there. and I'm sure you'll uncover some of it during our play. Let's say that things didn't go as planned. Strange, eh? Um, the wolf can have their own sets of belief. I do believe I sent over some notes on that to you. And half elves. Well, we don't have to talk about the elven faith at this point because none of you are elves. But we can talk about um, the types of peoples that live around the places where you are originally from. And if I start with Jeremy's character, let's see now a moment. I want to bring up the proper page again here in the GM's guide. There we go. Um, so your country of origin, if you will, heartland, dwarven lands, bordered by elves in the Dankwood. So elves tend to live slightly more north, and that basically means that you wouldn't have had a lot of contact with humans if that's where you grew up. So that would be something new for you.
Okay.
There would have been fewer of those. And in that area where Marita and Brennar grew up, a lot of Asleens live in those regions. They come in two different clans, the Quards and the Galdanes, and the difference is really who came to the Forbidden Lands first. And the Quards are slightly less, they're less nomadic now. They have kind of settled down and built villages and walls and so on because they mingled a lot with the local human population. Whereas the Galdanes tend to stick to their nomadic roots and don't really want to settle down. And that's very much in the region where Marita lived. So yes, you would be more used to Asleen humans than Alderlanders for sure. They tend to dress in fairly colorful clothes, according to what the book tells us. Right, so that's some of that information that I thought that you would need. What else? Asleens. Yeah. Great. So I think we've established some ties there and where you are in different parts of the geography. I'm a bit curious. If you want to share with me in written form later on, family ties and so on, because we didn't really have time to go into that in any particular depth. Maybe when it comes to Brennar, being a hermit means that you are cut off from your family, maybe permanently. I don't know. What's the story behind that? If you're an old half elf, which means that you could be more than a century old, you could possibly be 120, 130. If you want, basically half elves live 3 times as long as regular humans. So that gives you quite a span there after the first century, if you will.
You might remember a time before the Bloodlands. Or
Nope,
Blood Mist.
nope. That it's older. The blood mists have been there for 300 years. So, but you could have had, as a half elf, you can have a parent who remembers the time before the blood mist as a young person.
Yeah, so to that point, I'd probably be closer to 115, something
Mhm.
like that. And I figured I'd probably maybe lost a parent to the blood mists.
Ooh.
And maybe the elven side, we'll say I lost to the blood mist. And then, as part of that, the human one didn't necessarily take me in for what I was.
Hmm.
So, grew up and had to make do. So,
Your human parent also could have been already passed by the time you lost your elven parent.
true.
That can happen, yeah, for sure. That's also a destiny of the Frailers that they live so long that if they because they do grow up among humans that they will live to see the friends the human friends that they grew up with as kids that they will in fact die long before the Frailers will, which can probably be a bit unnerving.
Maybe
in the
that's
long run.
why Braynar led to seclusion and just being a hermit, right?
Yeah. And of course, staying a hermit in the Blood Mist has not been a problem at all. Um, yeah, how about Marita? What is your in relation to the rest of, because you're in kind of the same area there, to the rest of that society, Athlean society, if you will.
Marita probably she doesn't remember her parents. Um, she was taken in by the village as a whole at some point. So obviously not when she was a baby, but she was so young that she doesn't remember having actual parents. So she was kind of the street urchin, as you will, in the tiny village that everybody just kind of tossed scraps of food to or whatever until the druidic lady took her in and maybe saw some talents. Um, she's pretty good with animals, and she's got a natural ability for healing. So the wise woman decided to try to give her some structure, but it didn't take. She's she's still much more comfortable away from people. She doesn't give a lot of stock to their religions or the idea of personal belongings or anything of that nature. So as far as the religion goes, she would probably, in theory, she understands where the Raven sisters are coming from, but she doesn't subscribe to it.
Fair enough. And of course the um Asleans, they tend to worship the god Horn, which is basically a volcano. It's the volcano of their country of origin before they
Oh,
migrated to the Forbidden Lands. Um, and this has very much to do with their horse cult, if you will. As a nomadic horse people, they do very much honor their horses, um, which shouldn't be strange. And legend has it that the original horses of the Asleen actually had sort of manes of lava or fire as they came riding out of the volcano.
oh, cool. I can definitely use that in her backstory. I don't think she's I don't think she's overly religious, but she will pay lip service if she thinks it's going to get her what she needs.
And I'm sure it might in some in cases. I think that the animal handling, I mean, that's what you need to ride. So obviously she can ride. Uh,
Yes.
she doesn't necessarily have her own horse, but she can definitely sit a horse well.
Yep. I tend to view her personality wise. She comes across as kind of young and naive, but she's really more, what do I need to do in order to survive for another day sort of thing. She is not a good person, but maybe adventuring out in the wilds will instill that in her. Or maybe it'll lead her down a darker path. Who knows?
We have no idea yet. It's going to be an interesting journey to see. Um, I would peg her more, just from what you're telling me, more as a Cord Athleen than a Galdane. You talked about the village and so on, and that sounds a bit more Cordish than Galdanish, if you will.
Okay.
Um,
I will make notes.
just my association there. Yeah. So let's see now. Among the cords, then, and this is really true for both of them, the scale and the saddle and with the blade are held in very high regard. And Yeah, that's very much so. Mm. Right, Wolfkin. What
Right.
is, because you talked already a little bit about your sort of feeling alienated to the culture, but what about your family and so on? Are there any ties left in Fangwood for you to go back to?
Um, I imagine she's young.
Yep.
I put her at 19. She would still have a mother, maybe some siblings. But again, she doesn't really fit in with that culture. She's not the aggressor. She's not. Um, I imagine in her younger days, she would have tried to go down the druidic path, but due to several mishaps and accidents, um, she probably wouldn't have been able to continue it. Again, she tries to avoid fights, but it seems like the harder she tries to avoid them, the more she ends up in a fight.
Hmm. Did she get into a lot of trouble with the other pups, maybe?
Yeah, I think because she tried to stay out of the fights and the tussles and the what have you, they would try to goad her into them.
Ah, and
And
then she had to assert her dominance, because obviously that's
right,
what you do as a pack animal. And
she would
the wolf.
then get too aggressive because when she's attacked,
Yep.
the instincts kick in and she would just take them down. Um, I imagine she's also a little bit larger than average, even for a female wolfkin, kind of that big, gangly kind of girl.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would also factor into that.
Yeah, no, you did max out on strength, so that makes
Yes,
sense.
she's a big, tough girl.
Mm,
So the family's there, but I don't imagine it would be a good homecoming.
fair enough. Okay. Yeah, so there might be some friction there, some
Yeah,
other pups of the same age that would hold a grudge, perhaps even
probably.
possibly.
It would be very much she walks into town and the town collectively goes, oh God, not again.
Grudges. I'll put that down.
Yeah.
Um, all right. It's easy when you're a hermit. You don't have any social contact to other people. But how about the minstrel in the among the dwarves? What kind of trouble did you get into, or maybe no trouble at all? Maybe everybody loves this minstrel and is sorry to see him go. I don't know.
Well, I kind of not yeah. I kind of thought for him that there wouldn't be a lot of strife, but more along the lines that he was just kind of he really got into the legend and the lore that he knew that was just a big part of it. He was just kind of seeing as the kid growing up, going, oh, tell me all about the time that this happened, Grandpa. Tell me about this happened, and just kind of ate all that stuff up all the time, and kind of lived in that kind of idea of what else was out there. So he's just really anxious to get out, and kind of people just always, I guess, I'm kind of thinking of that his family is kind of like, well, we kind of wish you'd do the family thing and stay here and work the mines and kind of help build things and help get the relationships going with the other people around. But so not really, just more like misunderstood, a little bit, just kind of like, okay, he's a bit of a, he's the dreamer kid.
Mm.
He's more like, okay, I guess that he's just not going to follow in dad's footsteps and do what he's supposed to do. So there's that. It's just that kind of, like, not that lingering, almost like disappointment, I guess. Like, oh, you kind of disappointed that the clan a little bit, but by the same token, he's just got that, kind of, or had that's kind of starry eyed. Well, I'm going to get out here and learn everything that's going on in the world and tell people about where I've been. And then, the world's kind of maybe a little more disappointing to him than he thought it was.
Because
but
people are the way they are.
exactly. But so
And
yeah,
there's a
not a lot
lot
of
of strife in this setting for sure.
right. So not a lot of, I don't think that, like, not a lot of strife per se in his background, just more of that kind of, yeah, didn't quite fit in with everybody else, and just kind of but not no, I don't think in a horrible way. I think it was one of those, okay, well, you know go on, do your thing, figure it out, and we'll be here to pick up the pieces when you come back, kind of. Kind of, they're kind of like, well, you're not going to make it out there, kid. I mean, I should say kid, I'm an adult, but
Yeah,
that's the
no, but
attitude.
for sure. No, and being a dwarf, of course, the dwarven holds. It's must have been fairly well. I'm not going to say easy because nothing in Forbidden Lands is ever easy, but compared to some other habitats or some other places of refuge, dwarven holes tend to be very well defended precisely because you are under the mountains and you're creating your
Right.
settlements under there, and that makes it easy to keep enemies and blood mists away. So I can totally see how he's had a sort of a sheltered life compared to some of the humans, and far away from marauding Rust Brothers and things like that, or bandits. Um, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I would think that maybe someone within sort of the elders of the dwarven community might have been hoping that he will once, you know, is are they viewing this as his Rumspringa, like what the Amish do before they settle down?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That it's kind of that. Okay, you go do your thing, but we'll be here waiting for you when you come back because you're going to come back. It's you're going to find out that you're a dwarf. You're going to love being a dwarf. And you're going to want to come back and do the things that we do. And but yeah, exactly. That's how I'm picturing it. Is very much that kind of all right. Go do your thing for a little bit and then come
Yeah,
on back.
the Grand Tour.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think there might be an expectation on the part of the dwarven leadership or others. It might not have been explicit. This is I'm just sort of spitballing here with you, so feel
Sure.
free to reject or change this idea. But maybe they're kind of grooming him for the diplomatic corps. He's
Right.
a minstrel. He has a way with words, obviously. Even though he might not be a singer, he might be a musician. That's up to you. But at least he's socially inclined in a way that a lot of other dwarves will not be. Now the clan you're from is hardy, pride of their warriors and so on. So their diplomacy is very often gonna lean towards you get further with a kind word and a stick than just a kind word. Uh,
Yep.
but even so, you still need the kind word every once in a while, right? So maybe that's kind of what they're hoping for him later on when he comes back. Would that be a reasonable?
Yeah, that would be reasonable. And I think part of it too is that they're also even when they want him to come back, they're also looking for information too. It's kind of one of those, okay, we'll send them
Mm,
out. Yeah, you go, you do your thing. But when you come back, this also gives us something to know what's going on in the world because we've kind of been, isolated and we're like, well, let's see who else is out there. What else do we have to worry about now? Or are there other areas we can kind of exploit or move into? Or,
yeah, for sure.
what else is out there? Yeah.
And that sort of thinking, I think, is something that's happening among all the powerful people in the setting, the leaders of the various kin, of the various cultures, of the various clans, because of course there's all these subdivisions. Because suddenly the world is open, and that's going to lead to a great big change in politics, grand politics, if you will. It hasn't emerged yet that much because people are still just there's no infrastructure. People have roads are hard to maintain when you can't go that far away from where you lived. Um, so all of that is sort of has been under reconstruction now, which is why you're going to encounter a lot of ruins, a lot of abandoned places. But certainly, I think that leadership in various cultures and clans and kin will start looking for what are the other factions doing, what how who should we be friends with and who should we not be friends with, and so on. So I'm sure that there is that type of strategizing among the dwarf leadership for sure.
Yep.
Hmm, very interesting. We talked about where you are in Forbidden Lands. I'm a bit curious about. I'm gonna actually ask you all. Skip ahead in my agenda a little bit here because I think we've covered a lot of the other points that I've wanted to do. If you look at the map and roll 20 again, where would you all be now? If we're assuming, I'm thinking here of this group kind of like maybe The Expanse or Firefly, where you have this crew, and it's not necessarily a terribly friendly world out there, and they stick together, and they might be opportunists or heroes. We'll see what happens. But you have a good reason to stick together, all of you. And if you want to decide that we start the game when these characters meet initially, that's fine by me. I want to give you that freedom to do that. But it could be fun to roleplay that. But I want you to keep in mind then that Raven's Purge is a fairly long campaign. There's a lot of powerful figures of all shapes and sizes and inclinations involved. And my job as a GM to challenge you and create interesting scenes can very well include NPCs trying to co-opt single members of this group against the others, or recruit them for their own purposes. So for you guys to stay together in the whole campaign, we will need to have some kind of glue between them, and that can either work by saying, you've been together for a while now, a year, 2 years, or whatever a while feels like to you guys. Or you've only just met, but you as players already know what kind of glue that will develop between the characters over the course of the chronicle. So feel free here now. This is for you to decide.
I kind of like the idea of us having been together for a little bit anyway, because every game everywhere always starts with, you meet in a bar, you meet in a tavern, you meet on
No.
the side of the road.
And I tend to agree with that too. I like the idea of us, because I'm not gonna lie, my character wouldn't really. It would have taken her a while to bond, to want to protect you guys, because she's had such a bad pack experience. Because her pack never really accepted her.
Yeah.
So it would take a long time for her to be more than just muscle for hire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we could always, we could always work out specifics as to how we met, like in a flashback or something later on.
There is, in fact, a randomizer for that if you want it.
I was actually just noticing that the place that Josh and Chris originally said their characters are from is not too it's a little bit far, but it's not too far from the Fangwood. So
it's not.
As she's traveling out, it would have been fairly easy for her to just kind of stumble across them. And being the only one in the group with any kind of muscle, they very probably would have easily been looking maybe for a protector of some kind.
Yeah, for sure. Then we have basically, you could have followed, there's a river that goes up to the coastline from the Fangwoods.
Yeah.
And that's easy enough to follow, and then you're just about right on top of Tendra. It's a matter of a couple of days of journey, basically. Maybe three days
exactly
of
what I was thinking.
It's not very far at all. For our dear dwarf up in the northwestern mountains, it's going to be further. Basically, you have to go across the Forbidden Lands, but maybe you met in the middle. I don't know.
Well, and I think even, I think he was kind of at the point where he wanted to get out fairly quickly too. Like he wanted to get out and see what was going on. So I think he would have been one of those people who was, okay, this is all opened up, I want to go. So I think it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility that he's just, through circumstance and running around, that he just kind of made his way over there as well.
Yeah,
that he's just been wandering and talking to people and going, yeah, I think kind of like for him, he's kind of traveled quite a bit and picked up little bits and pieces of stuff here and there. And
and the three of us could have also been together when he comes along and shows up. Like we could have been together for like a couple weeks, a month maybe, and then he just kind of stumbles across this group of misfits. And
and what better story than a bunch of misfits?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How the hell did a human, a half elf, and a wolfkin end up together?
A human, a half elf, and a wolf can walk into a bar.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
A tavern.
And now we're going to throw a dwarf into the mix.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that makes sense. In that case, you've basically traveled along the rivers and ended up along
Yeah.
that particular coastline, right? So, if you want to have a bit of fun with this, we could roll a d66 and see exactly what the circumstances were. We don't have to stick to that, but it's a spark of inspiration, if you will.
We
Sure.
can start there.
Sure.
Sure, random tables are always great.
I know. Let's see now. Who wants to roll? Should I make the first roll then?
Roll away.
Okay, I rolled a 55. That is let's see now. Captured by Saurians. That's funny. It actually kind of works because there are parts there where there are Saurians. Saurians, of course, being lizard folk. They are not a playable kin in this game, but they
I shall
do
eat them for
exist
breakfast.
in the wilds. And if you look a bit north on the map to the marshlands north of Margelda, that does have some Saurians there. So if we go by that table, I guess you were all captured by the Saurians, and that's how you broke free from them. Maybe that's
Just
one way.
for those of you, if you're kind of new to Roll20, if you hold down your mouse button, it'll ping. And Mikhail, if you hold down Shift and ping, it'll basically move the map to that location.
Okay. So shift and okay, yeah, right. So I do shift and there we
That
go.
should-
That's the area.
Ah.
You're quite right.
That
So
makes
that's
things a
one
lot
version.
easier because I am having the hardest time trying to read this map.
Yeah, you can zoom it in using the plus.
Right,
and
but then I
minus.
can't see where things are.
Yeah. Okay. Fair
I
enough.
should mention I'm a little bit blind.
That's. I can send you the map later on, so you can have print it out and have it next to you.
Yeah, I think
Perhaps?
that's what we'll have to do next time for me.
Yeah. We'll have to find all those accommodations for sure. So basically, what the text says here: captured by Saurians, you wandered too far into the marshes. Suddenly, you were lost in the fog, with only the sound of strange creatures for company. In that moment, you were surrounded by dozens of Saurians, hissing amongst themselves. You were brought to their village deep in the wetlands and met a few other adventurers who had been captured the same way. You eventually managed to escape. Maybe you hate Saurians now. Maybe you acquired unexpected allies. So that's one version of meeting. I can roll for another if you want.
That one makes sense for me anyway, because
Okay. Then we
fighting her way out, protecting them, would make a better pack bond.
I suppose, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that could
Yeah.
happen.
And us non-combatants are going to appreciate having somebody fight their way out for us.
It's true.
Exactly.
Should I roll a couple of more times just to see
Sure.
if there's something better fitting, or if we go with that one? So another would be saved by adventurers. Yeah, that's basically the same thing, but someone else captured you.
Well, we may as well just take it as fate that we started off captured.
Yep.
apparently.
It is like
Um,
playing Skyrim.
It is like they. And the third thing I rolled was you were imprisoned and thrown in a dungeon. Now I have
Fate,
3
yep.
different capture scenarios.
So we were all captured, and
Apparently.
you probably watched me rip a couple people apart getting us out.
Then the question is, of course, if you were captured by other adventurers, Saurians, or Rust Brothers. Those are the 3 options that the dice have given us. I mean, obviously, we can slot anything else in there that we want.
I kind of like the idea of the Saurians, just because it's kind of seems like a group that would, instead of just other adventurers, it
Yeah.
seems like there'd be a reason behind Saurians wanting to get us besides other adventurers who would just like leave us for dead or do something else, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
I
sounds
have a
good.
feeling the Saurians are going to want to eat us.
Or
That could
sell
hap-
us.
That could happen. Their ways are mysterious to outsiders, and they certainly do not come out of their marshlands at all. if they can avoid it. So it's one of those cases where people might go in there because they're attracted to maybe find hidden ruins and ancient treasures and artifacts. But if you go into their homelands, they will react poorly to that, and you discovered that firsthand.
So we have a
Um,
reason to avoid swamps. That sounds awesome.
Yep.
You do. You do. Excellent. So you were captured by Saurians. Is this like a year ago now?
Yeah, that sounds
months?
about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where can we put you on the map now? Because in a year you can be anywhere on this map. I have yes, there we go. I have excuse me. I have a token here. And I'm in fact going to let all of you be able to control it because it is your marker for where the party is on the map. There we go. You're in the
Awesome.
plains, apparently. Smack dab in the middle of everything.
I'm
That
just playing.
Because
the wolfkin is far from her forests.
we were over there, right over in this area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you could have traveled further than that in a year for sure, but
Yeah.
it's all up to
There-
you.
Thinking looks like there's a village down here.
Yeah, there
And
is.
then from here, I mean, there's some ruins nearby. There's some mountains. Well, nearby being relative.
Hmm.
It looks like it's a good place where we could start seeking our fame and fortune from.
Yeah, sounds good to
Yeah,
me.
agreed.
There's also a keep that's like right there too. Like right
Oh yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's a keep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a castle of some kind. And again, they haven't been defined by the game, so we can fill those locations with whatever we want. I have, in fact, randomized a couple of adventure sites already, just for fun. But if you want to help out with that this time, in case you are in fact in a village, we can do that too. This is a very open-ended game, as I said, and I want this as session 0 to be a chance for you to kind of stretch your legs with the system and the open-endedness as well, and experiment a little bit maybe. In these parts of the land, we will find sort of, it's a crossroads almost between different kin. You will find some elven spring half-elves not too far away. You would find Alanders as well, south of the river, and they're kind of the oldest human community in the Forbidden Lands. And if anything, they lean much more towards the Raven sisters than towards the Rust brothers. So you're fairly far away from where the Rust brothers are usually found, but usually, I mean, they will definitely have sent out missionaries and groups to convert other people, and if they don't want to be converted, to teach them their error of their ways until they understand that they have to be converted, because they're Rust brothers and that's what they do. So just because you're not close to Alderlanders settlements here doesn't mean that you can run into them every once in a while. And that's also because it's so recently has been opened up. You might run into any type of person from any type of kin or culture, and just about any place. The likelihood goes up and down a little bit. That's basically it. Because people are in fact traveling. Not, I mean, most people are still farmers and crafters and will stay put. But there is traffic now on the roads and rivers that was not there before. So that's something that you will know. There we go. Okay, so you have been captured by Saurians at one point. Now you're out in the plains and looking for adventures.
I'm looking for money because the people in this village don't just give you things for free.
This is true.
Which is highly unfair. But I don't have I don't have enough money for pocket lint.
And I am now looking to keep my new packmates alive.
Yes,
'Cause
indeed.
You have proven that you can't do it yourselves.
Too
I
old.
cannot protect myself at all.
I will do it for you.
And I will tell you great stories in return.
See,
It's
great.
actually
If we find a place to go adventuring, first person tales from those adventures make better stories than hearing about us telling you them later.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. This is the reward, right? You will be able to, and in fact, the game allows this. In case you visit a settlement and there's a tavern and Findal wants to make some coin, sing to the guests, you can do that. That's a thing you can do. So there's
Is
absolutely that open space here in this game for you to do like in Skyrim, collect stuff in the wild, whether it's stories or vegetables, herbs, or meat, or and meals that you've cooked, and then sell it that stuff. And there's a lot of crafting options in this game. There's a lot of possibilities. It's a very well designed in terms of in-game economy. So it's entirely possible for you to we're gonna make our living and we're gonna sell stuff, and down the line, while I'm talking about that, it'll be possible for you to get your own stronghold, your own base of operations, and that will give you certain bonuses to have. For instance, when you come home to your stronghold, you gain an extra willpower point just for being able to relax. I'm home, I'm safe. Right? We can close the door to the evils outside, even though they might come knocking and actually trying to storm the castle, if you will. For now, I'm home and I feel good about that. So that's something that you can do down the line, and there is there's a whole economy around that too. So if you find a suitable ruin and you want to start adding defenses or farmlands and hire someone to clean up in your house, uh, all of that is included in this game. That's a possibility for you to do, and you're even encouraged to do it down the line when you've done some adventuring, and then you use that as a base and you go out on more adventures, and you can haul the loot back to your stronghold and keep developing that, and eventually that
we
might
become the villain.
Yeah. Or the beacon of hope.
Too soon.
Or the beacon of hope. Because, right? Or not. But just to give you that piece of information, that in this game, if you manage to clear out all the goblins from the stronghold and find the treasure, you can keep the stronghold afterwards, and so on. That's a thing you can do.
Excellent.
So as we keep playing, we will put markers on the map where things are, adventure sites are, as you have explored them. Right now it's empty because you're only just beginning with this. But before we get to that, which is of course next session really, I wanted to establish some relationships between the different characters. So what each of your characters are thinking about the other three, if you will. That's in fact something that you have on your character sheets. If you go to, let's see now, at least it's on the paper version.
Yeah, you can add up down at the bottom. It says relationships. There's an add.
All right. Yes. That's exactly it. Yes. Where you have the relationships. For some reason, I don't see it right away. But if you found it, that's great. So basically, shall we start with Josh? What would you think about Frida, Marita, and Fidon, respectively?
Yeah. Well, Rita, I definitely could probably easily see and agree with, I guess, because from past history, as far as kind of, I wouldn't use the term orphan, but being shunned out of society a little bit, or choosing to, I'd probably say there would be a good working relationship there, especially kind of living off the land, and also being squishy, for lack of better technical terms, and So to that point, then going over to Frida, basically being, thank you for being the protector. I'm this old, frail man, and just need some young whippersnapper to beat off the bad people. So I guess from that relationship, it's more of a for hire, I guess. And yeah, and then lastly, from the Mistral, maybe it's an exchange of information, kind of finding out what legends or what might have been told in the past or what he might have heard, and then comparing it to maybe what I know as far as lore in my years on in the Forbidden Lands.
Sounds good. Frida, how are you looking at the others?
So
This does not have to be reciprocal, but it can be.
I think Frida would be looking for family, looking for somewhere, anywhere she can just fit in. She's never had it before. So she comes across these three who, as far as she's concerned, obviously can't take care of themselves. They obviously need somebody to do it for them. So she takes on kind of that caretaker, den mother kind of role, and adopts them almost as her new pack.
Does
So
she view herself as the alpha in this pack?
Probably. Although they probably don't listen to her at all. Just like any mother. I think she would probably see again, she would be the caretaker. She would jump in front of them, and I've built her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken Path of Shield.
Yeah.
So she's literally built to take the hits for you.
Mm.
I literally can go, Perry, no, you're not hitting them.
No.
Get away from my pack mates.
Yeah.
Go away.
And I do believe that the higher up you get on that talent, the more you can parry for your pack mates as well. Bang bang. I think it's what's that, level 2, level 3, something like that.
Level 2, I can do it more than once a turn. I can basically pay a willpower to do it as a free action.
Yep.
And then level 3, I can do it for nothing.
Mm.
I can basically just go.
You'll be the wall.
Yeah, she becomes that. She steps in front of them in a fight. She probably cooks all their meals. She's very much the mom.
Is anyone else viewing her as the alpha? Will I
probably
suppose
not.
She can think she is.
And that's probably how it goes.
That's funny. I'm gonna have to look over here just to, because I'm curious. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this is a fairly high wits kind of group.
Except for Frida.
Except for Frida.
She's not very smart or social.
Yeah, that's
which is how she got into so many fights.
Yeah, for sure. But it's interesting because it depends on your cultural biases. Who is going to be the leader? Is it going to be the person with the wits, or is it going to be the person who is the strong fighter, or the social character? And each culture will have a different inclination towards that.
And I imagine where Frida grew up, it was the strongest leads.
Yeah.
Which is why she thinks herself the leader.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
And I think from the dwarf's perspective too, a lot of the leaders would tend to be the strong, buff type. So it's kind of like
at least in that clan for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So he'd probably kind of concede a little bit. It's like, okay, fine, yeah, that works for me. Plus, I'm a little softer and squishier.
Yeah.
I imagine there's a lot of, okay, no, we're gonna do this, or I'm gonna backhand you.
Is there any like particular sort of quirks in your relation to any of the others? I'm thinking because that's your general position in the group, but in terms of, you know, what would be your personal reaction to Brenar, the hermit, the ex-hermit,
Well, I imagine
Marita, the druid? Hmm?
Brenar would probably be very much like the grandfather,
Yeah,
almost
the-
like literally almost like a support worker kind of role.
yeah, very much a
I make sure he takes
kinship
his
of souls,
meds and
if you will.
eats, and I
It's all
take
right.
his I take his cranky abuse because I know he doesn't really mean it, or at least that's what I tell myself.
Kinship of souls. How about Marita? Because that's, I mean, she's obviously the healer of the group.
She's pretending to be the little naive child. That's exactly how I'll see her, because I won't see through it.
Fair enough.
So I will protect her like the child she's pretending to be.
But that also comes with you every once in a while putting a leash on her, maybe?
Almost. You can't do that. You're too young for that. That kind
No,
of
I'm
thing.
not.
The
I can
irony
do
being that-
anything.
the irony being that Frida is not much older.
Yes. Exactly.
But it's in dog years.
See, there's that casual racism.
Oh dear.
And-
So what about the relation to? I mean, we already established that Phenol is kind of just accepting this hierarchy.
I imagine because we're closer on the same lines of thought as far as who's in charge, we'll get along a little better. He might be the only one I see as like an equal, an adult.
Maybe, and he is an adult.
Yeah.
Viewers should know, by the way, that in this system, old people start with a higher reputation. They have a +2, which means extra bonuses for social roles. Adults have a +1, and young characters have no modification. So when you're slightly older than young, there is a chance that people might have heard of you, and so on. So that's a part of the social dynamic, and in this game, it's completely acceptable for characters to use skills on each other, and for NPCs to use their social skills on characters. So if you meet someone who's particularly suave and has lots of empathy and manipulation, and there is a contest, and the NPC wins, well, there you go. And that's typically a check in rules terms between empathy manipulation versus wits and insight, I believe. And whoever rolls the most successes wins, basically. And the mechanics of that is, if you are at the losing end of that, you have to agree to the deal that the winner is proposing, or attack them physically. You were speaking about how you got into a fight with the other pups all the time. You lost all those exchanges.
Exactly. Learning from that, though, Frida would realize she's smart enough to know she shouldn't talk.
Send up the dwarf.
Right. I pick things up, I put things down. I hit things, I don't talk.
And of course, let's see now, just want to double check performance and manipulation. So I think Phaedon is probably the group's face.
Yeah, I kind of think probably along those lines, but certainly willing to kind of like duck to the side, when Frida needs to get involved. It's like okay, I'm the face, but okay, you go ahead. I think someone needs to get punched now.
All you have to do is be standing next to me, and I can take the hit for you.
Oh, perfect. But I think to a point, in his view, I think Phaedon is kind of like, okay, I've been wandering around for a bit. I've seen some things. I've seen what the world is like. I can kind of help, these folks get through what I've seen. So it's almost that, even though I may not be, the kind of the hermit grandfather kind of thing, but I might be like, okay, yeah, I've seen a few things. Maybe we should just, maybe I'm a little, like, not, I won't say cautious, but I'm just a little more Um, of the let's maybe we should just avoid this situation, or maybe maybe just kind of that little more the voice of, well, should we be doing that, like kind of thing. um but I think I certainly appreciate, and probably even a little fascinated by all the people that I've met, because they'd be, collecting stories that'd be outside of the realm of my experience and exposure,
Hmm.
which would be, I think, so it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of neat. So I think always trying to get, figuring out what's going on. But I agree. I think in his mind, anyway, he definitely thinks he's kind of more of the face, kind of more willing to step forward and go, hey, we're just traveling the same road as you are. Let's talk for a second. What's going on with you? Oh, this is going really bad. Okay, yeah,
I imagine having the 8-foot wolf behind you will help those intimidation rolls, though.
true, true. Yeah.
I might actually because this is the Forbidden Lands run on the same engine, the Year Zero engine that Free League has published and is using for almost all of its games. And though I haven't played all of the games yet, but in Mutant Year Zero, there is it runs on the same engine. Obviously, that's where the name is from. There is an intimidation maneuver you could do, which is based on strength and intimidation. It's for a particular profession that has that ability. But I mean, I can see at some points if Freedon wants to just scare people away or out of the way, instead of having her roll empathy, which is more persuasion, I could just have you roll strength and just use her bulk
That would
to get
probably be
people to
good.
get out of the way, because that would make sense.
I imagine
So,
when she's trying to intimidate somebody, she's not talking. She's
no,
standing there snarling because I'm a wolf.
exactly. And why should you be trying to?
Why would I talk? I just have to growl.
Exactly. Point made. Oh, from Fido's point of view, then, what is his feeling about each respective of the characters? So if we start with Brennar, the
I think
hermit.
much of what, like Brennar said probably earlier, the same idea that, almost like, okay, we're kind of the older guys in the group. We kind of have a little more probably the idea of like, okay, we're kind of guiding this maybe a little bit. We might not always agree on which one of us is guiding, but I think that there's,
Yep.
yeah, but there's that idea that kinship, that kind of, okay, sharing some stories, figuring stuff out. I think that definitely works really well.
Hmm.
I think with Marita, it's probably going to be more of a trying to figure out what makes her tick. I think that's going to be kind of the neat thing. I think he's going to want to dig into that story and figure out, okay, what's going on behind the scenes here. How, there's this kind of the rebel kid. There's got to be a story there, kind of thing. So I think probably might have a bit of a take her under the wing, kind of, almost kind of, things like, oh gee, yeah, let me guide you a little bit, maybe kind of looks not fatherly, but that's not the word I'm looking for, but that kind of idea that is like, okay, I'm gonna um come alongside, make sure you're okay. you
And she is younger, so
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I think he's just probably fascinated by Frida. I think Frida, first of all, is just gonna be one of those that's like, okay, this is like completely outside of the realm of my experience. Really, really, cool, cool person, and a little, a little on the in awe side, obviously, because I'm going to be much, much shorter, much squishier, and so it's kind of, this is going to be kind of fascinating. But still, I think also in the same way as with Marita, kind of, okay, you're the muscle, but also being younger, kind of wanting to kind of mold and guide and say, okay, let's see where we can go with this. So I think taking on sort of a father-ish figure, if that makes sense, but in his own mind anyway.
it's possible that she's the first wolfkin you've ever seen. It's
Right.
entirely possible.
Yeah. So I think that's probably going to be
Because
like
in your neck of the Forbidden Lands, they would have been exceptionally rare.
right.
During the Blood Mists, they didn't leave their woods, and afterwards,
I
well,
don't
some of them
imagine
had
many still
reason
would
to,
have.
but
I said I don't imagine many still would have, because if you're safe in the woods, why would you
yeah.
leave?
No, the majority, and that goes for almost every kin. The average human will be a farmer or a craftsperson and will stick to where they were born. And that's true for a lot of the kin. Some of them are more nomadic, like the Galdane Asleens, for instance. So they will be riding around because that's their lifestyle. And then some are moving because of need or desperation. Maybe there is a danger in their area. They move out of there. You can expect there to be roving smaller groups of bandits and mercenaries or people for hire in almost any given village or settlement. So there will always, the mix. It's starting to people are starting to notice it more than certainly the year after the Blood Mist, but it's still completely possible that this is the first encounter for Fidan with a wolfkin, and apparently
Yep.
Saurians.
Right. So I think
Yeah. So Marita, then, what is Marita's attitude towards the others?
I figure where she grew up without a family, she's probably kind of decided this motley is what everybody else refers to, but she doesn't have any actual hands-on experience. So I figure she since she is willing to do pretty much whatever it takes to survive, she's just kind of extended that to the group. So she's the one that will do morally questionable things to keep the group intact or out of trouble or whatever. She doesn't have the same morality that some of the others might have. Just because she views getting out of whatever the situation is to be more important than any kind of loftier ideals. But with kind of the family motif, she would with Brennar, she doesn't understand how he's so old and his magic is so weak. Since she's fairly
Fair
new
enough.
to this, and she's just as magically potent as he seems to be. So she doesn't quite get it. Like maybe he slacks off or whatever. So she
That's a
views
bad
him as
teacher.
he's a bad teacher. So when there's things where their magic might overlap, like I think both of us get access to general spells like detect magic and
Yes, you do.
yeah, there's like
Yep.
2. So she's always trying to kind of one up them on those things where their paths overlap.
Yeah,
With,
basically, you can all do detect magic. You can do a ward to protect people from magic, and on the second level, you can do let's see, dispel, I believe,
Yeah.
and bind magic is, I think, the third level. So it progresses a little bit, but there's all in all, when you reach level 3, there's 6 spells that both any spell user will be able to use, because it's common knowledge among the casters.
Nice.
For Frida, she's probably like the mom that I'm always like, we got to make sure the mom doesn't find out about this. So
Because I will try to stop you.
yes. So yeah, so it's a lot of like making sure she doesn't find out about some of the shenanigans. But I imagine she probably will. And with Fidan, she appreciates that he's kind of taken her under the wing, but she keeps trying to get him to go along with whatever harebrained scheme she has come up with. So it's like, okay, I'll do the thing that you want me to do, but you got to come do this first.
She's the one with the crazy plans.
So yes, she is going to be the one with the crazy. Well, she's also young, so although she wants to survive, she also has that kind of feeling of immortality. So she doesn't realize yet just how serious things can be.
Let's explore the dungeon. I'm sure nothing will go wrong, and there will be a great dwarven artifact.
That's right. It's a great story you'll be able to tell later. And there's probably some powerful magic down here and some goblins to kill. So we should all go and fight the dragon, and it won't go bad at all.
Frida's got that used to, but she's also literally watched her family eat people. So
yeah,
she's a bit more tenuous when it comes to that stuff. She knows what bad can happen.
Yeah, that's a thing that can happen. And speaking of those relations, I should inform both the audience and yeah, Jessica and Chris. There's a habit among Asleen warriors. When they go hunting, they do wear wolf pelts, which of course makes the wolfkin not so happy with the Asleens in general. Um, Obviously, you've been
Racist
able to
bunches.
overcome this particular tension in the group. But when you meet other Asleens, you can expect the Wolfkin to react poorly to them. I don't think the Asleens in general have any particular feelings to and fro regarding the Wolfkin. However, a lot of druids, and this is important for Marita, a lot of druids feel like the Wolfkin are kind of their origins might have been some kind of demonic half demon origins, which of course the wolf can take a great deal of exception to, and violently so if someone suggests it to their face. But
A casual racism.
Yep.
but Marita will have heard this at least by from her teacher and mentor, because it's one of those things that is just passed down. It's well, we think that they really are.
Although I'm probably still the first one you've seen in person.
Might be so. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm just here to keep an eye on you and make sure you don't do anything too bad.
Well, if I start
That-
talking to demons, then you can confirm their suspicion.
That's right.
Whether the Wolfkin actually are demon related, the legends do not say who is right on this. But that's going to be important for the group to know, because of course, as you travel the Forbidden Lands, other people will be informed by these legends, and their attitudes and reactions will react accordingly.
Nobody's gonna like me.
Um,
It's okay. Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
like me, and I'm gonna get us in all kinds of fights just by being me.
on the other hand, you're not an Alderlander Rust brother, so there's
But
that.
they're the only ones that like me.
And I'll be trying to tell people she's really okay. It's okay.
She's very motherly. Have you
She's
tried
very
her
motherly.
stew?
She makes a great stew.
Exactly.
I don't ask what's in it, but it's a great stew.
I swear it's just deer.
Because there's that yeah, that might be a tension, but obviously Marita is not going to let that get in the way of the family unit, if you will. Yeah, you muted yourself, Chris.
Yeah, I don't have anybody else to take the hits for me.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Excuse me. I was going to, oh yes, I wanted to, for the benefit of the audience actually, to go over a little bit about what each of your characters are really good at. And that might, in case the other players haven't heard this as well, it's a good opportunity to do so. So if we start with Brennar, you are a sorcerer, you say. But this game, unlike a lot of other fantasy games, does not in fact key sorcerer's powers to intelligence or wisdom or those mental capacities. When you lay a spell, it's a matter of putting in the willpower points that they will gain, and then some ingredients and possibly other factors that can increase the power level even more, and then you roll that way. So you never actually roll for wits or wisdom or anything derived from those attributes to do the actual spell casting. You do use wisdom for other things that sorcerers know, like lore skills and so on. But that means that Brennar might be surprisingly strong for being a sorcerer,
Yep,
as he has a
and
strength of 4.
to that point, he is. Yep,
Yeah,
more
which
than
is
meets the eye for the poor hermit.
exactly. He is
He only looks like a
squishier
frail
than
old man.
yeah. He's squishier than Frida, but not by far. And so your expertise areas, and this will have emerged because you've been together as a group for a while. Excellent crafter, strong in terms of insight and lore means that if you need someone to be the lie detector, Brennar is your guy for that, and also has read all the books. And his primary sorcery is, in fact, blood sorcery, which sounds a bit scary. Does everyone know what this is in this setting? No. Then let me describe for you. You will have, I'm sure, demonstrated some of these capacities before we start our adventures. But it could be good for you to know how to calibrate your actions and behaviors. So let's see now. Blood magic. It's a form of magic that derives its power from the power that exists in living blood. Um, on the lower levels, you're not gonna see Brennar do like human sacrifice. I hope.
Not the first couple of games.
Exactly. But blood can fuel some of his spells in smaller amounts. He will be good at. Do you want to describe what you're good at in terms of the spells? Why not?
Yeah, sure. So to the point previously discussed, some of the spells overviewed is the example, the ability to bind a demon. I hopefully would never have used this yet with anybody, but if it came down to it, this would have been one of the items that Brainar might have dealt with in the past. And then also Blood Bond, which allows me to transfer energy from myself to another or from an unwilling target. So possibly, in the heat of battle, seeing that people started to go down, and maybe at the time, um, Marita was occupied and had to help out. So this is once again back to the kind of the similar stories, I guess, to Marita. But yeah, and very much looking forward, hopefully in the future, to rank 3 for the Path of Blood, because I'd love to burn some objects alive. Yeah.
Yep, those are some potentially sinister powers that Brennar can um, uh, produce, invoking um, invoking his Path of Blood. Path of Blood. So magic in this game counts as a talent that only the spell caster professions get access to. The other talents, and these are special powers, then special abilities, maybe that everybody gets some talents to use. The other talents Brenner have are, well, why don't you describe them as well?
Yeah, so one of them is actually my kin talent,
Mhm.
which in this case is actually called Psychic Power. And I don't remember it off the top of my head, so one moment. um, yeah, I believe it has something related to willpower, but I don't have it currently up in front of me.
It's the first willpower point you put into any type of talent working, and it doesn't have to be a spell. It can be any talent. Counts as 2. So when you put in 2 willpower, it's 3, and so on. And that's going to be very handy for your spells because it basically tells you that your power level will have an extra oomph to begin with. Um, and that's the half elves in this setting are particularly adept spellcasters.
And then, yeah, and my last one being herbalist. So if we need to, quote unquote, do survival rolls, um, or in the event of us actually just walking the lands, if we need to forage, it's considered me resting. So it's just one of those things of I've been living off the land for so long that this is normal for me, for my character.
Yeah, you have level 2 herbalist too. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so with that talent, you get a bonus for finding edible herbs, vegetables, roots, berries, mushrooms, anything growing, anything that you don't have to hunt, and you collect that. It takes a quarter day. When we're doing the journey system, you'll find that the days are divided into quarter days. And if you're spending a quarter day foraging, you roll survival and get some bonuses because you're a herbalist, and that's how much food you basically collect during that quarter day. And then, of course, someone has to cook that food, which brings us to Frida.
So Frida, my talents, I mentioned earlier, I took Path of Shield, which literally lets me jump in front of my party members and take the hits for them. I can parry, so use my sword to deflect the hits that would be meant for them, as long as they're standing next to me.
Yep.
And then my next talent is my kin talent, which is Hunter's Instinct. So basically, I can spend my willpower and identify a target, whether it's an animal or a person, and I can track them for days. And when I finally do get my hands on them, I get bonuses to hitting them, to taking them to broken.
That's what they do, wolves.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, literally tracking. And then I took chef because Frida doesn't really want to kill things. I just want to cook, but nobody will let me. But that allows me to take the food that our herbalist just found and spend a quarter day and turn it into actual meals for the party.
Yep. And of course, food being a scarcity in this world, that is a very valuable talent to have. You all start out with some food in your packs, but that might run out, and I've seen it happen. And when it runs out, you get hungry, and that's no fun. So I think it's going to turn out to be a very nifty combination of talents when you are traveling across the map and exploring places. So this game really taps into all these different facets of adventuring, giving each character something to do. That's, you have your fighting capacities, but you also have all these other facets of maintaining the adventuring group, and this one should not be underestimated. It's a very good asset.
No, and I really find, looking at the talents when I was creating the character, it makes the characters feel much more well-rounded. It makes them feel deeper.
Yeah, I'd say that. There's definitely a niche for everyone.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways in which you can increase the capacity of your character and be a boon for your group.
Yeah.
They've really done a tremendous job of calibrating that. So I'm a fan. I'll note too that once you get chef level 3, your meals will be so good that people will regain lost empathy points.
Yes.
From eating that meal. So that's something to consider down the line. We'll see if that's what you're gonna, focus on. But it's one of those little nice perks of that they've done with that particular talent. All right, Marie, skills first for Frida. You are, you will endure when the going gets tough. You're not going to stop for hot or cold weather or very adverse environments. Competent fighter, strong, can lift heavy things when that's needed, and that's really
that's what I do. I pick things up, I put them down.
Exactly. Indeed. She carries a longsword, I saw.
Yes. I got it with my. I was able to choose any one-handed sword. So I took the biggest one because, again, 8-foot wolf.
Yep.
It made sense.
All right. So Marita then.
All right. I'm not sure what what's considered to be like a competent skill or a good skill, like as far as total dice pools go. But she is good with animals and good at setting bones and stitching people up and things of that nature beyond her magic.
And as magic, she is a healer, I believe.
Yes, she's a path of healing as a druid path, so she can heal well, I've got it handy here.
Yeah.
She can heal not just physical wounds, but she can also restore people's sense of self-confidence, how they feel about other people, basically their wits and their empathy, as well as she can, uh, as long as it's not too strong, she can cure poisons and sickness as well,
Hmm.
depending on how strong it is and how much juice she has that day. Um, Talents, her human talent is she's adaptable.
Yeah.
So if she spends willpower on a skill, she can use any skill as long as I convince the game master that I should be allowed to roll that skill.
Yep. That's the human
Yeah.
forte. They are very adaptable indeed.
And then for her other talent, have as many Brennar,
Yeah.
but she's a pathfinder. So if she's leading the way when the group is traveling, there's some bonuses involved there. Of course, given her personality, she may just deliberately lead them into trouble to see what happens. but she is skilled at finding a way through the forest or the mountains or the swamps should we ever, for whatever reason, decide to go back.
Yeah.
Let's see
Awesome.
how many people I can make the wolfkin beat up.
Yeah. She does carry a quarterstaff, but if she has to hit something with it, then she is in a losing position.
Yeah, you asked about what is the typical skill ranges. A typical, shall we say, militia guard, if you will have 3 in the attribute, being strength or agility if it's a bow, and maybe 1 or possibly 2 skill levels in that particular weapon. So you should look at average dice pools for typical mooks and um, typical average people to be around 4 or 5 dice, and then some gear bonus to that, possibly. Oh, I think we just lost Jeremy.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so combat wise, she's like town guard level, maybe a little bit under that.
Sound like that, yeah. Let's see now. We have to regain Jeremy at some point soon. I hope. He's writing something, so we will see what happens. Sorry about that. Well, connectivity can happen. Yep, his internet dropped, so he'll be back. I imagine that that will make a bit of a mess for the overlay, but we'll live with that. The moment he comes back on, he will tell us more about his character's capabilities. Shouldn't be too long. See now. Meanwhile, what should I tell you? I can tell you that most of the adventure sites, there tends to be a variety of encounters that you can run into. Some will be puzzles, some will be social relations, and some will be more combat oriented. There's definitely space in this game when you have enough money to hire people to come along with you in case you feel that there's a certain competency that you need to fill out. And that could be, temporary hirelings that go with you for one mission only, and then you never see them again because they did their job. So that's something to consider when you're strategizing for how to pursue your adventure and achieve your goal. And again, it's perfectly valid to go, yeah, no, that particular area is a bit too overpowering for us right now. So we will leave that and come back later, possibly with a posse.
Yeah, it seems that there's no need in this game to just kind of check the quest off the list and move on. You can
Exactly. And I would say that in some adventure sites, because the writer of the adventure site was being tricky, it might well happen that you go in and you can't find your way out again. There are always trade-offs and things to think about in this situation, because of course you get challenged. And in that case, well, okay, there you are. This is the challenge, right? But there is nothing saying that, just because there is an adventure site there, that you have to explore it, or that you have to fight the final boss, if you will. That's There's nothing dictate, unless the adventure said, and then they pushed the wrong button or pulled the wrong lever, and now they're in big trouble because they did so. That can happen, of course.
Splat.
But yeah, exactly. There are consequences to choices, for sure. Um, yeah, we'll see. I'm sure he's going to be back in a moment.
So I have a question.
Yep.
Mechanically, how does the math work? I noticed some of the skills have like strength attached to them or what
Yep.
have you. So are we adding
Yes.
our strength to the roll or
Exactly.
to the skill point?
Exactly. So a skill roll works like this. It's attribute plus skill plus any stuff or modifications that go to it. So for simplicity's sake, melee, you roll your, oh, here we go, is coming back on. You roll your strength plus your skill in melee, so that's 7. And then you have another bonus for your longsword, which I believe is +2. Yep,
Two.
+2.
Yeah.
So you would be rolling 9 d6s all told.
Okay.
Before any other modifications.
Okay.
So, and there might be modifications. I might say that you get a +3 because this is super easy, or you get a -3 because this is super hard.
So it's we roll a d6 for each point that we have.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a moment. But
Okay.
the point here is that when you have a bonus or a negative on a skill roll,
Mhm.
it always keys to the skill itself.
Okay.
So let's say that you're fighting in the dark. That's a -2 to melee.
Okay.
But if I go into a character that doesn't have too much in the way of a melee, like Marita, for instance, she has a 1 in melee. She would still be rolling her full strength. So that -2 means she can't use her melee this time. It's
Yeah.
1 -2 is going to be 0. It just flats out at 0.
Yeah.
She's still rolling her full strength and bonus for her staff.
Okay.
And that might not be a whole lot, but there we go. So
It's there.
it's attribute, skill with modifiers, and then equipment that gives you bonuses. And I mean, the obvious type of equipment is when you're fighting, you have your swords, you have your quarterstaff, you have that equipment, right?
Yeah.
But you will find that there is a whole bunch of equipment in the trade goods list that will give you bonuses on a whole set of other rolls as well.
Mhm.
And then meaning, you want to set up camp. Well, if you have a small tent, you get a gear bonus to set up camp roll. You want to go fishing. Well, if you have fishing equipment, that gives you a gear bonus. So there's a whole set of rope and grappling hook gives you a bonus to your move roll when you want to climb, and so on. So there's a whole set of different equipment that gives you bonuses. For a chef, for instance, one day you might want to consider buying a field kitchen because that's going to give you a bonus for that.
Yeah, I was
that's
reading
how
in
that
the talent that if you have a kitchen, you just get the automatic 12 units of food instead of
Yeah,
having to roll for
exactly. Which, of course, is not something that you will have when you're traveling, unless there's a field kitchen. But those are big and bulky.
Yes.
We were talking about our different skill capacities, and Jeremy's back. So let's see what Fidan is good at.
Sorry about that. My internet out here in Oromocto just dropped, but I got it back.
That can happen.
So a couple of things that we have. So for me, I have a talent called True Grit. So one of the things that I can do is I can actually push dice rolls multiple times by spending willpower points.
Yep.
So I can just do that, which is great because we're kind of tough us dwarves.
Yeah, and as a before you go on with that, it might be good to just interject and say that in some areas you will have fewer dice, right? So since you need 6s to succeed, it might be rare to get sixes. Any dice pool under 6, you can't count on succeeding. But if you fail and you don't get any sixes, you can push your roll and re-roll it once. And if you do that, you might actually end up hurting yourself. If you get ones on your attribute when you do that, you will take points of damage. As you do that, you gain a willpower point because you get kind of angry and adrenaline spikes. So apparently that powers your special abilities. Um, so that's basically the mechanics of rolling for a skill, that you do that push. And that brings us back to the dwarfkin, that they can push more than once because they are just that stubborn.
Yep, that's exactly it. So that's one of the ones I have. Then I also have something called Path of the Hymns. It's the kind of goes along with my minstrel abilities. So basically, I can take any number of my comrades who are equal to the number of the willpower points that I spend within a short range of me. I can get them to each recover 1 point of damage to an attribute.
Mm.
So I can just kind of encourage you, or somehow it's like
They
this
feel
path of the hymn.
reinvigorated.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's to an attribute. So my understanding that is it doesn't have it. It can be any one of the attributes that you're. So if you're broken, I can kind of pull you back.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and then as far as like skills and things go, I tend to be again into the obviously the performance, the manipulation, of crowds, that kind of stuff, lore, insight, and then healing. Again, that's another thing that the minstrels can do, but it's more healing along the lines of healing your not like it's like a empathy healing is typically what it tends to be around, that type of healing.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you're also, I see that you're with the healing. I mean, that you can uh, anyone with a skill can, and anyone even without the skill can try it with just their empathy roll. Can try to set bandages, do first aid, that kind of thing, and that can be useful after a fight if
Yep.
you get bleeding wounds and whatnot. Sometimes you might need someone to stop uh, your comrade in arms from bleeding out and dying in the battlefield. So that's a capacity as well, aside from Marita's magic healing abilities that are of course much more powerful than that.
Yeah, I kind of like I've been out in the world enough that I've figured out ways to set bones, do some things. I've seen some stuff.
Yep.
So
And I
I
will
think with
very
this
much
party,
appreciate everybody's healing.
yeah,
You will get
sounds of it
buffed.
with the healing and the performance and the blood magic, with the sort of party that we can take a beating and then we just sit around the campfire, have some stew and some beer, and okay, we're good to go
Sounds
tomorrow.
good.
we're gonna
You
go.
watch me take a beating, you mean?
You will take a beating sooner or later. Yeah. So speaking of taking a beating, basically what happens, there are 4 different damage tracks on your character sheet, and each attribute can take damage in various ways for various reasons. And when you have taken the same number of damage points as your attribute, your character is broken. And that means basically that they can't do anything more that requires you to roll a die. You can't do any skill checks or anything like that anymore in that scene, or until you are unbroken, in fact. For if you get broken for strength, it's time to roll for a critical injury. And that's the scary roll in this game, because if you roll too high, it's a D66. I think if you roll in the 50s and above, you get a lethal wound. Some of them take a while before you die, so it's still possible to save the character. So, for instance, you can get a wound that is, you're going to bleed out over a day unless you get medical attention. And if you roll a 66, you're out of luck. There goes the head. You're done, basically. So there is that risk as well. But that's to tell you that you're not really wounded as a character until you get broken. Because if you lose the other strength hit points, those will be recovered after a quarter day of rest. Basically, and that goes for any of your damage tracks. So when you do a quarter day of rest, you recover all the damage you've taken in one of the tracks. If you have taken damage in several different tracks, you have to pick which one that you're going to recover from that quarter day of rest. So that's something to consider. And this is sort of the strength represents the hit points. The agility is more exhaustion and thirst. So you're panting, you're just done. You've run a marathon. That's what it feels like. You're not wounded per se. You're not going to die from it necessarily, but until you get something to drink or that rest, so you can get unbroken again, you're down for the count, basically. Exhausted, can't stand up. Wits is more confusion, headaches, um, the kind of thing that means that you maybe it's fear. Maybe you're scared witless, literally, in this game. So when monsters have fear attacks, that can definitely go in your wits. And make you just run away, and that can happen. Ghosts, demons, what have you, they're out there and they can be scary. um, and then when you're broken in terms of wits, you're either so scared that you're in a panic and just running away, or maybe you're going catatonic, or you are confused and have no idea and you can't think and you just want to shut out all that noise for a while. It's those kinds of effects. And finally, for empathy, if you run out of those and you're broken in that sense, you're probably going to throw a temper tantrum, hit someone on the face. Uh, well, possibly not that, but and just
So
not be
Tuesday for Frida.
exactly,
Exactly.
and just not be able to communicate with anyone until you calm down. It's
Hey,
just I lose my faith, or maybe you get depressed. That's a way to react to losing your empathy points as well. There's no point in going on. This world is bleak. People are just there's no hope in the end of the tower. Maybe that in the end of the tunnel there's no light. So maybe that's a reaction to losing your empathy points. So it's those kinds of emotional states that are tied to social interactions where you just can't with other people anymore.
and my empathy's higher than my wits.
Yes, it is. um, which means that you're somewhat more resilient. But in this system, it also means that she scares more easily than others.
Which is probably why I don't like the violence. I've watched people ripped apart one too many times. Nightmares.
That could be the case. Very good. So now we all have a sense of who these people are, where they're at in the Forbidden Lands, and where we'll go from there. Uh, and we have uh, now in the Atlantic, it is 20 past 10. I'm not sure that we're gonna have time to throw any adventure sites on you tonight. That would be take a little bit too much time. Um, what we could possibly do for giggles, if you want to, because we unless you feel that it's late. Um, basically, I feel we could possibly use another half an hour. Um, is that we could look at this village that you're close to, and flesh that one out, just as a base of operations, if you will. You might not stay there. You might leave it and go elsewhere, but at least we have put you on the map, and in the same hex as you are, there is a village. So maybe we should know something about the village if you want.
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I'm totally down for that.
I have tables for that. I've amused myself and the rest of my family rolling up adventure sites for you guys that we will throw, and legends. There is an auto generator that allows me to roll up a bunch of legends for you as well. Legends for the audience is basically a plot hook in this game. um, Players will not know how much of the legend is true and how much of it is false. Sometimes the entire legend is completely bunk and false. Sometimes most of the legend is in fact true. And there's, because the scarcity of written records, it's difficult to know which is which. And the adventure sites of Raven's Purge do come with designed legends to those to invite the players to um, think about where they might want to go and explore. And also because we might end up on random encounters and random adventure sites. There is a capacity for me to randomize legends to fit those places that you encounter that are outside the scope of what has already been written for Raven's Purge, which is I find is very charming with this game. It allows us to have a lot of freedom in a lot of ways. So let's see now. We had there we go. So the legends.
Jess will be right
Oh,
back.
it's in that particular booklet. Where did I put that? No, it was. We were gonna build a village. That's what I said. Sorry, lost my thread there for a moment. 146. Nope, that wasn't quite it. Where were the table? We were using these earlier today. There we maybe no. Ah, here we go. Yes, villages. All right, so I'll take some notes in my Google Doc here, so I remember what this village is like. First of all, how big is the village? Someone can roll a d6 for me.
I got 1.
It's a very small village. In fact, it's more of an outpost than anything else. It has a population size of between 5 to 20, if you will.
Is that including us?
Exactly. How old is this place? Now we roll a d66. Maybe Josh's turn?
Yep, just one moment. $61.
61. It is a very, very new place. It's just a few years old. It dates back to after the Blood Mist. I'm gonna guess maybe it's a recently sprung up trading post. Who knows? Who is the ruler of this village? We need a D66 for that. Chris.
52.
Aha! It's a cunning. Jessica, can you roll a D66 to find out what type of a cunning person this is?
Sure. Sorry, guys. Tech hates me. Just hold on a second.
Ah, there we go.
There. Thank you. Sorry.
So what was the roll? I didn't look.
22,
22? Okay.
I think.
Then it is. Oh, it's a cunning elder. Apparently. What is the problem of the village? Has Jeremy rolled yet? D66?
He rolled for me.
I haven't rolled a d66, but
Go ahead then.
right.
Oh, you rolled the dice, yeah.
Right, yeah. I'm doing it old school with actual dice.
Tell me
14.
what I should do.
14. The problem of this outpost is that there is widespread drunkenness.
Widespread drunkenness.
Yep.
Don't know how to fix that.
Yep, apparently people here like to get in their goblets. What is it famous for, this little outpost? Are we back to Josh now? D66?
Yep.
41.
It has a well-brewed beer.
I guess that matches.
Yes.
That's probably why there's drunkenness.
Yep, that seems very likely indeed. What's the village oddity, Chris? Roll a d66.
31.
31. Uh-huh. It has odd building materials. Okay. What is it built from? Huh. What would it be built from in these forbidden lands? Are they building their houses from...
It's near a river. Could there be like an excess of like metals?
Maybe. We'll have to think about that one. I didn't feel the inspiration hit me right away. I felt maybe old bones might be over the top.
Could be amusing though.
That's our wall filling. I don't know. Interesting. Yeah, it's some kind of odd building materials. I'll have to figure that out. Maybe they have a very useful clay deposit that allows them to build clay houses in ways that other villages do not.
There's huts in, I think it's New Mexico, that are similar to that.
Yeah. No, I mean there are lots of cultures that use clay to build their houses, and for sure. So it's not odd as such, but compared to a lot of other places in the Forbidden Lands, that will be a bit odd because a lot of places don't have that type of access to water, maybe, or that particular type of clay. So yeah, that could be a characteristic, maybe. I think there's a lot of places where they use stone and wood for house construction. What about the village institutions? There will be one such, Chris. A D66.
I rolled for the odd building.
Oh,
so
you
I
did.
think
Okay,
it's,
then it's
yeah, I think
Jessica's
it's,
turn.
yep.
Yes.
Oh, back to me?
No, it's Jessica.
Oh, Jessica. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jessica.
That's okay. Second time's a charm. Yep, nope, it still is not working.
/rule.
Oh. Yeah, no, that's what I said.
on the character sheet, there's actually a button for roll D66.
Is there? Oh, I made it work.
Yay!
Hey,
56.
56. There
I
is a
was
militia
saying-
here.
I was saying rolling instead of roll.
There is, in fact, a militia here in this little outpost of 20 people. I
5
guess
to
that
20.
means
5
that
to 20. There could be like 7.
Very
Exactly.
small militia.
It is, but it is a militia, and I think that this might be because if this is like a trading post or something that a lot of people are traveling through, maybe it's here to protect the travelers more than to sort of, well, I guess that they will keep track of all the drunken people as well. But I'm also thinking that maybe this has grown as a trading post to keep bandits away and whatnot. And basically it's a glorified, well, in our world, it would be a glorified truck stop.
We're camped out at the Irving.
Exactly.
my.
A place where merchants, peddlers, travelers of other kinds stop for the night. And the militia are there to protect them. And there's someone who has a brewer who has started making a killing serving people with beer, even though it's not actually a formal tavern or inn. It's basically this person's house and serving your pints out of the window.
Small, local, independent.
Yep.
Independent
Local
brewer.
craft brew.
Yep.
Which has turned out to be very popular among the travelers that come through here. Um,
Come see our
So-
village. We've got like 7 people and a couple of guards. And oh, look, there's a bootlegger.
exactly. Though there is no actual bootlegging going on because it's all legal, there's no one to call it illegal.
We're playing in backwoods New Brunswick.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much how this little village looks like. Um, how long might you have been here? I get the feeling that it's probably not a place that you would stay in permanently, given how small it is.
Maybe we just came back from adventuring someplace and we're stuck here because we have no money. So we're desperate to get out of this backwater burg.
Yep. Could be a quick stop while we're trying to figure out our next gig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sounds reasonable enough. I'm thinking. Let's see now. Outpost, something ish, 20 people, widespread drunkenness, militia. There's not going to be a tavern here, so you're still going to make camp inside the small earthen mounds that they've tried to throw up as some kind of defense around this trading post.
We might be
Um,
able to like convince somebody to let us stay in their house.
Yeah, this would be the Forbidden Lands equivalent of an Airbnb in that case.
How many people can stay in a small tent?
No, I'm sure they're going to be fine with
It depends
if
on
you
how
have
big
some
you are.
coppers. Exactly. If you have some coppers, I'm sure they'll be able to let you sleep in the stables above the horses.
Or Jeremy
and-
sings them a nice song.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly. Trading in
Entertained
for a
them for
nice
the
song
evening.
and a story, for sure.
I was going to
Have
say,
to
what if we
find it-
don't have a couple copper?
That's where the story and the song comes in.
Yep.
Exactly, and possibly a cooked meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
They
probably
might
cook
not
better
have-
than the local housewife.
They might not have a whole lot of chefs in this place with max 20 people. So we have to come up with a good name for this place. It's like what, Peddler's Rest, something like that.
Actually, I kind of like that.
Yeah, that works.
The Outpost, Peddler's Rest. Well trafficked, apparently. Very few people living here permanently. So in this area, it would be mostly humans. I'm gonna peg them as islanders because that's convenient. There might be an Elven Spring half elf or two. They're not too far away from here in terms of their heartlands. And I'm sure there could be some Asleans as well because it's not very far away from their heartlands either. So I think that would be the typical demographics of this area. And then, of course, just looking at the trade routes going through to the extent that there is trade, you, in terms of travelers, you might in fact see coming through this place. And this, if this isn't the first time you've been here, there might be the occasional elf or dwarf traveling down from the north along the river. I could see that happening. But that means that you don't get to see too many orcs or goblins or wolfkin in these parts. I think that will be a bit more uncommon.
Yep.
So
I'd
yes,
probably get a few stares.
yes, I would think that you get a few stairs. And in Peddler's Rest, I want to take down. I'm not going to give you the legends tonight because I still want to do a bit of refining the randomized legends that we created today, much to my children's joy. They had fun rolling those dice. But I do want to flesh them out a little bit. So instead, for starting legends, I'm going to give you that before the next session. But I thought that a neat way of deciding how many legends each character might have heard of would be to do a straight up lore roll. That seems like something that could have happened, uh, except possibly for the minstrel, because of course that's your job. So I'm gonna give you either lore or um, performance, perhaps. In this case, your performance skill is higher because of the empathy. So I'm gonna let you roll for that instead if you want, because it's your job to tell stories and play music. We haven't established what kind of music you play. Are you singing? Are you? What kind of instrument would you prefer?
I'm carrying with me a flute and and a drum, like a bowrin kind of drum.
Yeah.
So I kind of figure that mostly, I kind of see myself as I'm wandering, just kind of just gently playing music that kind of keeps things calm. Like I'm just that kind of, with that music. And then if I want to sing a song, then I can bring out the bowrin and kind of have a beat going where I can sing that along. So it's more of a singer and storyteller kind of thing,
Mm,
with a little bit of performance with the drum and some flute music if I need to kind of get that going as well.
very good.
Yeah.
So
So
not the
now is there a
not
way
the
to
minstrel that we have seen in The Witcher.
No, not to that extent. More of a yeah, more of the storyteller and you know um, yeah, exactly. More of the storyteller and just, and kind of that some singing with a little bit of background accompaniment kind of thing.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Now,
All right.
so is there a way for me to roll using the character sheet? I'm just kind of curious.
There should be, if you click the actual skill, I think that will automatically roll for you
Oh,
in the field, if I recall correctly.
okay. So something should have popped there, I think.
Yeah.
I was just trying to do that instead.
So the rest of us are rolling lore.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just tell me how many successes you might have. Let's see now. We are down here.
Yeah. I had one.
One success for
Oh.
Jeremy, one for Marita.
So where's the button again? Sorry.
So it looks like you click next to if you actually click on the actual skill and then
Yep.
click roll. That's what I did.
Okay, I see it.
There we go. Nope, not your thing.
Oh,
I'm not surprised. And Brenar has heard at least one legend as well. So when you look at the dice there, the ones with the swords, that's a hit. And the ones with the skull is a 1. And should you choose to push such a roll, you do not get to include dice that have rolled 6s or 1s. So they're taken out of the pool and they stay there. So successes remain. You don't re-roll those. And the 1s also remain. The skulls, that is.
So the way
No, you're not taking any damage from this now because you just rolled once. But should you decide to push the roll, which means that you only have 1 die to do that because the other one was a skull, then you would take at least 1 point of damage to your wits because you pushed the roll. But that's a chance for you to get another 6. Now, obviously, it's there's not much reason for you to do that now since we're doing the first session here, and this is just to establish who knows what about legends in the world. But for the future, that's also when you push the roll and you get those ones, that's when you get the willpower points as well. And note that when you heal up your damage track on your attributes after a day's rest, the willpower points stay. They stay there permanently until you burn them on your talents and so on. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So sometimes in this game, one strategizes a little bit. Okay, maybe I can make that extra effort on this skill because I know that there's a safe place nearby. And even if I hurt myself a bit now, I can take that pain and then I get those extra willpower for later to use. So that's a typical behavior in this year 0 system. You cannot push your roll after succeeding, if you get a single 6 on the first roll, you can't push it unless extra 6s add something to the roll. So in combat, you can, because every 6 adds either a stunt or damage to your opponent. So that's a good time to push rolls, even if you succeed with the first one, if you want to risk the extra damage to yourself. And social conflicts can also have that kind of dynamic. But there will be times when an extra 6 is not going to make any difference at all, and so there's no point in pushing it.
Mikhail,
yeah.
just so I understand my role, because I've got the skull, I got basically nothing, right?
That's correct. You got nothing.
Okay.
That's correct.
Trying to understand the role, because
Yeah,
I've
no,
never
that's
used
it.
this
So
before.
you need the crossed swords to get something.
Okay.
I tried to push to come up with extra legends, but I didn't succeed on the push. So
That's correct. And because yeah, I mean, normally that means that you now and when you push the roll for lore like that, what you're doing is you're pushing 2 skill dice and 2 attribute dice. Wait, I was looking at the wrong one. Sorry. Yes, okay, you did the right thing. I'm sorry. I was looking at Brainard's roll instead of Marita's roll. That was wrong of me. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so that means that Fidan, Marita, and did
Brennar.
Brennar
Yeah,
did get
I got a
one,
loss
didn't
and I
Yeah.
got a loss and a pass.
he? Excellent. Okay. Good. Then I'm gonna between the sessions, I'm gonna give you these legends, and then it will be up to you to decide where this little group of brave adventurers in the Forbidden Lands will go next. The world is wide open. It is waiting for you with treasures and artifacts and possibly large, long, sharp, pointy teeth.
Excellent.
They're mine.
Yes, they are yours. Okay, tentacles then. Is that better? Tentacles?
Tentacles are never better.
Are never better.
It depends on who they belong to.
Indeed. All right. And with that, I would say that we have concluded our session 0, and we'll reconvene in 2 weeks and start the actual campaign and the actual adventuring. That's going to be very exciting. I'm very much looking forward to that. This seems like a group of characters that can have some shenanigans and live to tell the tale.
Excellent.
And for everyone at home watching, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks from now.
All right. Bye, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Good
All
night.
right. Thanks, everyone.